Hey, ProLife Gens, Kristan Hawkins. Welcome to this new episode, Explicitly ProLife podcast. Today, you are in for a real treat because it's the end of 2023, baby, and we are celebrating. And we're going to talk about the biggest stories in the pro-life movement this year, as well as many of the wins we had. So joining me today is our Vice President of Media and Policy at Students for Life and Students for Life Action, Kristi Hamrick, the great Kristi Hamrick. Christy is not to be confused with Kristan, although often media reporters do confuse us. So you never really know who KH is in a lot of things. So, Christy, you are responsible at Students for Life day to day with crafting a lot of our public policy strategy, which usually gets me in trouble with other people, by the way, getting me in trouble. And then you're also crafting the media strategy. So you're the one talking to the mainstream media, talking to them about the pro-life generation, what we're doing in the pro-life movement. So you've got a handle on all of these stories. So I was thinking about how do we recap this huge year of 2023 and all the things that happened. I knew you were my gal. So I'm going to go month by month and I'm going to quiz you on what was the biggest, give me the biggest one or two stories that you can recall that happened in the pro-life movement that month. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
You accept the challenge. All right. January 2023.
Well, the most exciting thing in January, especially for people like myself that actually remember when Roe happened, was that we celebrated the March for Life without Roe v. Wade as a death sentence over every viable child in the womb. And that, I mean, I could cry about it now if I think about it too hard. It's an extraordinary thing to witness. And I probably marched in 30 marches. So to be there in Washington, D.C., it was a celebration. It was a worship service. It was really exciting. And then as a preview, we're going to come to June where that came to fruition. So that's going to be one of our biggest hits. But I think really just the worshipful celebration of Roe being gone. But frankly, for me, one of my favorite articles happened in the Atlantic in January, where one of the top political reporters in the country, Ron Brownstein, really forecast how chemical abortion was going to be not just the wave of the future post COVID, but Students for Life as a leader in changing that conversation and in the policy. And that is a storyline that runs really through our everyday, but certainly through 2023, where we not only have led the way on the messaging on chemical abortion pills and what a cancer they are throughout our society, but we are leading the way in innovation in how to just stamp it out in Jesus' name, frankly. But that forecasting article at the Atlantic was pretty exciting. And I think, too, another thing that was forecast for the rest of 2023 was your confrontation, Kristan, of Donald Trump when he started to make some of his first squiggly comments that needed a firmer hand. And that also was something that started in 2023.
Yeah, because he was making some comments trying to like blame pro-lifers for the lukewarm victory that Republicans had in 2022, which wasn't the case because, as you and I detailed multiple times, candidates that were outspoken on the life issue, they were the first races called, and we actually saw more victories. We actually had firmer pro-life majorities in state houses starting January 2023 because of the election in 2022 than we had in January 2022. So this whole narrative that Donald Trump kind of, I think, bit the bullet with the swamp was wrong. That it wasn't because of abortion. It was other issues, maybe like, I don't know, lack of vision, talking about anything, or putting their head in the sand.
Bad candidates,
That's right.
bad spending plans. There's a lot of people that didn't do their homework and they were going to blame the pro-life movement for being the reason. There was a lot going on with that.
And in January, after the Atlantic article or before the Atlantic article came out, that's when the FDA kind of came out and said that pharmacies, so your mom and pop, your local pharmacy, can now dispense and become an abortion facility and give out these chemical abortion drugs. So, I mean, the whole landscape began to change in the pro-life movement because you're not talking about just brick and mortar dirty abortion facilities on the wrong side of the tracks. You're talking about every time now you walk into a Walgreens and CVS, you're walking into an abortion vendor's headquarters.
You really can be. And so February was really interesting because you go from this triumphant moment in with the celebrating the end of Roe, and then I think there was some really brilliant forecasting in terms of GOP infighting, which we've been in the center of trying to help the GOP, but also chemical abortion. And so in February, the Alliance Defending Freedom lawsuit from Texas moved forward in a really exciting way. We talked about it at Fox News. You were all over the media, really talking about why this case was significant. And it was funny because from the first day that I met you, I've been talking to you about chemical abortion pills, and it took a long time for the rest of the movement to catch up to it.
Mm,
So, and even then, with the media in February, I think people really started to see this lawsuit, which could end the way in which chemical abortion pills are distributed by stopping its online no test distribution, was a significant thing. And so we
mm,
saw some of our early wins in February, but then we saw really some early losses in regards to pharmacies getting more involved, as you said. And then that started a whole other kind of programming, which I would say Students for Life has been an absolute leader. Like, for example, protests at pharmacy locations across the country, uh, at the headquarters of pharmacy operations, just to say, if you enjoyed the kind of opposition that Planned Parenthood has received, you're going to love hearing from us in the future. And that started a whole
that's
other
right.
kind of activism for us.
That's right. And people can still go to thisischemicalabortion.com and download the free guides for how to just hold weekly, daily protests in front of your local pharmacy, letters that you can print out to give the local pharmacists or pharmacy workers, reminding them about their rights. That's all still freely available. And we want this to be an ongoing project very much for the pro life movement. So, hey, so let's head into spring. So, what happened March and April? What was happening during the spring semesters? I mean, I know I was getting protested by Antifa, but for the rest of the movement, what
Oh,
else was
yeah.
happening?
Plan B vending machines got hot. The whole idea that you're going to just sell
Mm,
these drugs on campuses, and Students for Life really was the only one sounding the alarm on this. And yes, we got a lot of coverage out of it, but it's because we created an action package. We went out to try to equip these students to stop it and confront it. And that really was huge. I mean, you really have to understand, you do, I know, but for people watching, that it's a pill pushing environment in abortion today. Chemical abortion pills, Plan B vending machine pills, and you don't even know where these pills are coming from. Honest to God, it could be India, could be China, could come across the border of Mexico. It's like a little fentanyl market of deadly drugs for abortion, and yet we're trying to get them everywhere. So that was big. But I think also what started to get big in the spring was a real uptick in violence.
mm,
You got protested at Virginia Commonwealth. We had the Hunter College incident
that's
where
right.
a woman who eventually took a machete to the neck of a reporter took after students. And we had one of our spokespeople, Lydia, dealing with rape threats. So we really saw, and then also in the same time frame in Nebraska, uh, where Jane's Revenge threatened to shoot up a training of ours. So it's not just that we were dealing with pushback, which is normal. We were dealing with violent pushback. And
Mm,
in the same time frame, and this is almost funny, our lawsuit against the District of Columbia was reinstated. So that was a victory, saying that you couldn't allow Black Lives Matter people to vandalize and tear up the city of Washington and arrest two kids with chalk. And that's what happened to us. So I thought it's
yeah,
sad,
I
but
mean, that's
also
an
funny
important case
that,
because they
yeah.
painted with permanent paint on the street leading up to the White House, 16th Street, defund the police. Black Lives Matter, the city painted that themselves. Then they allowed the protesters to paint equals defund the police. And then the city maintained that paint and like spiffed it up and made it neater. And then when we got a permit to, and with washable paint, paint black preborn lives matter from the Planned Parenthood, we were greeted with 6 squad cars. We tried to chalk it. 2 students got arrested for chalking because we always have a plan B. We're good activists. And then an Obama judge, we filed a First Amendment federal lawsuit. Obama judge threw it out. But we finally came back and we got a big victory on that with a 3-0 decision from the circuit court.
And we
Yeah.
got it, interestingly enough, in the context of actual violent attacks coming against us. And certainly another theme of 2023 has been the Biden administration and Attorney General Merrick Garland in particular's absolute disregard for the violence against pro-lifers. And that, I think, is really shocking, where you see Riley Gaines on one campus and you on another being surrounded and threatened, with police keeping you in a locked room. That's kind of a shocking thing. And and it really is fascinating to watch the way in which the media kind of ignores violence if they don't mind the people who are being attacked. But to go into one other trend I thought was interesting, one of the things we're always trying to do is hold the abortion industry accountable. And in Indiana, in April, a really exciting thing that we were a part of was highlighting all these deaths and horrible incidents that were happening inside abortion vendor operations. This isn't safe, legal, and rare for anybody, not for the baby and not for the women. And we were part of a huge expose that ran in Indiana. And that was part of Kristen's, one of the programs that you put forward, these incubator projects and these investment in other organizations. So that was exciting.
Yeah, that was exciting to see some of the fruit of empowering local and new national pro-life organizations to come up who've been able to find, these tragic stories and bring them to light, to form the conversation, because we often hear, from advocates, abortion advocates, that we got to keep abortion legal so it's safe. And I'm like, who is it safe for? It's certainly not safe for the child. And women are dying now. Just no one talks about these things. And now, thankfully, we know by the end of 2023, Indiana is practically, zero surgical abortions now. We don't know chemical abortions, but that was a huge victory. Something else happened here in Florida. I'm filming this in Florida right now that I was really excited about in April. Can you tell us what happened in April? Because we were door knocking. I did some street activism in Naples in Florida in February. So I went to Tallahassee. I forgot about that. I drove up there. So let's talk about what happened in April.
Well, in April, the thing that I thought was exciting was just your handling of all these ridiculous protesters. But Ron DeSantis signed the heartbeat legislation, and that was a game changer, not only in the national narrative, but I think in terms of the future of his candidacy. However, it turns out this time, Ron DeSantis has shown himself to be a real hero in defending heartbeat or better. And there was so much pressure against this piece of legislation. And in fact, you went down and door knocked against the head of the state Senate to convince her to support this piece of legislation and let it come forward. Ron DeSantis signed it the same day that it passed. And that was really pretty fun.
And our
People kept
students were
telling us,
standing
you will
right
never
behind
find
him.
it.
I was so excited. Our students
That's
at
right.
Florida State, who had given up so much time, we leaned on them so much during the whole
That's
spring
right.
legislative session of like, we need you at the Capitol right now, to see the leaders there being able to stand behind their governor and know that this law is going to transform abortion, because of Florida at the time was the 5th highest abortion state in the nation. All right, let's go into May.
Exactly.
So May, we had the Hunter
Well,
College situation, which was we had a
yes.
person who chewed. It was our first fetus eater, folks. We've now since sadly had several, and we can talk about that later. But that's the machete professor who vandalized our table, and then when they went to her door, she greeted them with machete and chased them down the street. She got fired, then she got rehired for another college in Manhattan. But I wanted you to talk about this. Comstock Act. That's when we really started to talk about this federal law that's an old law, but still in effect. Old laws matter. And that really proves that the abortion lobby is engaging in conspiracy to commit federal law almost every single day they operate. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, it's interesting because as going from really the fall of Roe and just not even a year later, people have been looking at what are some creative ways to address what is the issue of abortion and the number one means of abortion in America, which is chemical abortion pills. So the Comstock Act, it's about 100 years old. And what's funny is people will make fun, oh, it's 100 years old. And it's like, well, the Constitution's older than that. I mean, is it the age or is it the effect that bothers you? In this case, I would say it's what it does. Because what the Comstock Act says is that you can't mail things intended for abortion. And the no test online distribution that Biden set up through his FDA is a mail order abortion service.
Mhm.
That's illegal. And then it has includes 5 years of prison time, and it includes fines. And it says that anything that you're going to use for abortion could create these felonies. And what is going to be interesting is one of the things that we've been saying to the abortion vendors and to pharmacies is if you participate in this mail order business for abortion and there's a change of administration, you could find yourself facing serious legal ramifications for illegally mailing things intended for abortion. When chemical abortion pills were brought into the US in 2000, they were distributing them in person. And I think that's how they managed to ignore that, even though I'm sure they shipped them to those vendor locations. Even so, though, now that's not what we're talking about at all. We're talking about death by mail all over the country.
Hey, ProLife Jen. Ever wonder how the impossible happens? How pro-life Americans persevered for 50 years until miraculously Roe versus Wade was overruled? How we even determined a winning play? Ever wonder what we're going to do next in the pro-life movement, or what we must do next in the pro-life movement? Join us for the 2024 National Pro-Life Summit this January in Washington, D.C., the day after the National Pro-Life March, and you will learn how to do the impossible. We're going to make abortion unthinkable and unavailable throughout our land and forever change our world, one life at a time. Hurry up. Seats are limited. We will sell out. So register now at ProLifeSummit.com.
In May, too, I have to say one of my favorite articles, you're not going to be shocked by this, is when we survived a PolitiFact fact check of our chemical abortion.
You deserve a trophy for that one, like a literal get you a trophy for that. But yes, explain to everyone.
So one of the things that the ADF lawsuit, which we mentioned just a little bit ago, they said, look, you can't call pregnancy an illness and you can't bring this dangerous drug onto the market, especially if you don't test for its impact on minors. We said we agree with all that. And we raised the issue that these dangerous drugs also have an impact on the environment, that the same things that disrupt women's fertility can disrupt aquatic life, animal life, and plant life. And think that means for you, your water supply, your food supply. So a lot of people told us they didn't see it. We filed 4 different citizens petitions to the FDA. And as you know, PolitiFact takes a lot of pleasure in debunking conservatives and pro-life people like us. Spent 2 months going through hundreds and hundreds of pages. And at the end of the day in May, they wouldn't come out and rate it as true or false. They just did a straight up article. This is what they say. And that's got to be one of the most satisfying articles of the year for me. I'm sure probably that's a career high, frankly.
It was a career
because
high. That was a challenge, because even in that article, I remember, Christy, they interviewed like a biology person or whatever, but that person had ties to Planned Parenthood. They couldn't even find like a neutral or unbiased scientist. Like they were still interviewing. And I remember the quote from it that I talk about in speeches sometimes of, they were like, well, yeah, there might be chemicals or chemicals or metabolites from chemical abortion pills in the water, but there's a lot of other really bad things in the water too. And, women's rights. So,
yeah,
okay.
exactly.
It was, so we're right.
So
we're
not
supposed
lying. To water for women's rights. I mean, that makes no sense. Even if you support abortion, that's not an argument for poisoning the environment or for government sanctioned medical waste being dumped. And that's what people need to understand. The end result of the way in which we set up chemical abortion is chemically tainted blood, placenta tissue, and human remains being flushed into the wastewater system. That's going somewhere. And people need to think about that. And so for May, that was a great month for me. I was pretty excited about it.
That was.
Then June
Christy was
comes
having
up,
parties by herself. But yeah, okay, June. Talk about June.
I was.
Her.
So June comes up, and Kristan had a brainchild which didn't just work. It worked on a huge scale, where we were going to celebrate the reversal of Roe in front of the Lincoln Memorial. And it was not an easy feat to pull off. Tina Whittington, the executive vice president, deserves so much credit for this.
Especially since Kristan had a vision, but didn't have any time to logistically pull it off and just handed it to the great Tina Whittington. But yes.
It was extraordinary. And we did learn we probably need to rent our own bomb sniffing dog. There's a thing I didn't know before that particular event. That was difficult because so many more of the press came than was expected. and the police had to screen it all, and but we had so much media out of it, carried on C-SPAN, carried with the White House pool, sea to shining sea. You saw a celebration in the historic Lincoln Memorial celebrating the end of Roe, and that was a really great day too, I have to say. And that was definitely, Tina pulled a miracle out of a hat, and I do want to rent a bomb dog myself next year. So
Yes. Yeah, especially since Vice President Pence at the last minute decided to come. And so then that added a whole nother like tens of thousands of dollars of unbudgeted money for security. But it was such a beautiful day. And I don't know, it's hard to even express the feeling to be there on the Lincoln Memorial on these, in the steps of like Martin Luther King Jr. Advocating for human rights, and to be there to mark just this momentous occasion of 1 year of lives saved, and to be able to pull together, unite so many different pro-life organizations: 40 Days for Life, Sidewalk Advocates, Pro-Life Partners Foundation, Alliance Defending Freedom, Live Action, all these groups together into one face, one voice to say, here we are as a pro-life movement. We're not going anywhere, and we're going to celebrate the victories as they come, and these babies are saved. Because you see it, and I see it in these news articles now. They're talking about babies saved, and then they act like it's a bad thing that more babies are being born in red states. And I'm like, since when did the narrative become more babies is bad? It's unbelievable. As we move on from the big piece de resistance in June into July, there was a big story that started coming up about the military. Can you tell folks what's going on and what happened there?
yeah, anybody who thinks that the abortion industry has packed up and left the country is not paying attention. And there is so much money flying around. It's insidious. So the abortion industry was able to pressure the Biden administration to help pay for abortion travel because, again, after Roe fell, different states were limiting abortion, saving lives, and you're going to hear at the end of this show how many. It's astounding, how many we know of, because that just came out just a little bit ago. But they wanted to pay for abortion travel. Now, in the military regulations, it's very clear you can't pay for abortion. So they were paying for abortion travel, but they're not paying for vacation travel or travel for somebody who needs physical therapy or mental health care. No, it's just abortion travel. Senator Tommy Tuberville put a hold on military promotions to protest this, and Students for Life has stood by him. Sometimes I think at the first we were one of the very few, to be honest. Now, people are really standing with him now, but it
Mhm,
has
mhm.
been a shocking thing to see Republican senators denounce a fellow senator, not denounce Biden for forcing abortion spending into the money, but denounce a senator who's calling attention to it. It seemed like a small thing at the time that you thought would be resolved, but it hasn't been. I mean, we are here months later, and Senator Tuberville is still holding the line to keep that abortion spending out of our military budget. So God bless him, and we're standing with him.
That's awesome. I'm excited to see his fight and this taking this tactic that the minority still has in the Senate, even though they're majority, to use it. And the sad part is the Biden administration hasn't caved. They are holding up military promotions because they are insistent on getting that abortion travel funded. And so you'll see these stories against Senator Tuberville. Senator Tuberville is holding up military promotions over abortion travel. No, no, no. The Biden administration is doing that. That's how ideological they are on this. Okay, let's get into August and September. We started talking a lot. I'm looking through some of the notes here. It would make sense because that was the first GOP debate, which you and I were at. We started talking a
Right,
lot about Republicans. So can we talk about some of the
right.
biggest stories during that kind of back to school season when the primaries really started to heat up?
Well, we launched Biden's favorite Republicans, in part when we were looking at people like Representative Nancy Mace, who was attacking the GOP for being a defender of life. And again, when you looked at Pasadomo in Florida, who was trying to prevent the 6-week bill limit that Governor DeSantis actually signed, so that was exciting. But we started targeting it, and it's a growing list.
Hmm,
Recently, we added
sadly.
Senator Dan Sullivan from Alaska, yeah, because he's one of the ones that went on the floor of the Senate to denounce Tuberville for standing up for
His
preborn
own
military life.
colleagues
So
in his own party.
yeah, exactly. It was shameful. It was terribly shameful. So Biden's favorite Republicans has launched. They're doing his job for him, and that's shocking. So it's been a lot to talk about. I mean, in some way, it's our sad responsibility because somebody has to point out when people really are making a mistake. And I want to be clear that this doesn't happen in a vacuum. It's not like somebody says one thing and we're running out with a news release. It's not like that at all. There are conversations taking place. You're reaching out to people. There are letters that are sent. We've got staff on the Hill. So, this is about us trying to say to people, make the right pro-life choice. And if not, then we're going to explain to your constituents the choice that you actually made. So, I really consider that a sad responsibility. Right now, we have a billboard up in Nebraska, again, addressing another of Biden's favorite Republicans, because if you're going to try to block pro-life legislation and pretend you're pro-life, we're going to make sure the voters know about that.
Right.
It's,
Senator Merv
it's
Reeby, we're telling him
a
to
sad.
resign. He's the reason the Heartbeat
That's right.
Protection Act did not pass last year in Lincoln, Nebraska, because he wouldn't vote for it. And so we ended up with a 12-week pro-life law, but we should have had a 6-week pro-life law. And you're talking of hundreds and hundreds more babies who are dead because of this one Republican who has failed to live up to his pro-life statements and past boastfulness in the past. What else happened? So October, dun dun dun, we had the election in Virginia and in Ohio. Tell us a little bit about that and that story. And now, even since those elections, the fallout that we've been seeing.
Yeah, both ballot initiatives have been huge this year, and to be honest, they're going to be huge next year. And the thing about ballot initiatives, they're manipulative. They're a get out the vote effort for the abortion lobby, and you can tell just how aggressively they are. I mean, let's be honest, President Biden is in real trouble. So much so that they're going to have a pro-abortion ballot initiative in places like Maryland that has radical abortion laws. They don't need a new abortion law in Maryland, but you got to see it as get out the vote GOTV efforts. So in Ohio, they had a ballot initiative that did not prevail, sadly. And in Virginia, Governor Youngkin was running on a really tragic idea of abortion, more than 9 in 10 abortions supported as the GOP position. He was calling for a limit at 15 weeks, which allows for almost all abortion. And the media had really set up the pro-life movement to say, if this wins, that's the GOP's position and that's the winning position. But it lost. It lost very clearly. So we're both talking about how do we get out the pro-life vote and how do we address what happened in Virginia. And in both cases, it's really the same thing. In Ohio and in a lot of the other ballot initiatives, we haven't been direct about how abortion is on the ballot. And in Virginia, trying to say that it's pro-life to support more than 9 in 10 abortions makes no sense at all. In all these cases where we've lost, it's been, in our view, a real lack of clarity of message and a commitment to and a bravery to make a pro-life case. And I know, Kristen, you've written quite a bit about that, as we have really
Once again,
tried to
making me
hold the
friends,
line.
Kristi, making me friends. Calling out pro-choice
Yeah, exactly.
Republicans. Yes, making me friends. That's Kristi's job.
It is. Yes, I'm very good at
It's so
it.
important, though. I've been traveling the country all fall and, speaking with pregnancy center directors, sidewalk advocates, grassroots leaders who've been in this fight longer than I've been alive, students, and no one's clamoring for a law, a national law that, will allow more than 9 out of 10 abortions. Heartbeat, preventing abortions when a heartbeat can be detected around 6 weeks. A lot of people are excited about that. I mean, obviously, we're all excited about life at conception because that's when human life should be protected. But when you're talking about the having to get consensus and move people and move the Overton window, you can get a lot of people say, "Yeah, let's start at heartbeat." That makes sense. That's also a fantastic educational opportunity for us to once again rehumanize the child in the womb that we're told from the abortion lobby is nothing but a meaningless clump of cells. They hate the fact that science proves and ultrasound proves that the child has a heartbeat, because that we know dead things don't have heartbeats, and that's the universal sign of life. and that where there's a heartbeat, there is life. So, it's an ongoing talking point for us for sure when we're speaking to the GOP and some of these squishy Republicans who might be getting some bad advice, Donald Trump maybe included. That this is not 15 weeks is not where the pro-life movement is at all. And that's not what we fought so hard for. It was a tactic to send a challenge to the Supreme Court because the abortion facility in Mississippi was conducting and committing abortions to 16 weeks. It was never a strategy of the pro-life movement. So we have to get wrapped up here. I have to head out for a speech, but I want you to share, to me, the most exciting story of the year, and the new report that came out around Thanksgiving about lives saved. Let's end on a high note when we talk about stories from 2023.
It is a high note. I don't think people understand that what Roe v. Wade did was it allowed for abortion through all 9 months for any reason whatsoever, and sometimes with taxpayer funding. When Roe fell, by the grace of God, more than a year ago, it allowed for real pro-life laws to be passed. And what we found out is that in the last year, in states with strong pro-life protections, like heartbeat protection specifically, because we went and looked to see which where the highest math was. In fact, 32,000 lives were confirmed saved. And how do we know that? Because they were born. 32,000 people born, welcomed into the world with their birth certificate showing that they are a unique creation that is recognized in this world. They should be recognized in the womb. But this is not philosophical data. This is birth data. And so during Thanksgiving week, we were thankful because that was an extraordinary thing. And we also learned from the CDC that week that the year before Roe fell, there was a 5% increase across the board in abortion. So it was going the wrong direction. And now we see 1 year later, lives saved. So it's exciting time. Pro-life laws matter. And it is the heart of our business model and of our passionate model to see life protected in law and in service. So it's been a real roller coaster ride.
It has been.
And
I
I
don't
know there's
remember much of
controversy out
2023. It's passed by.
there. Yeah, but we're winning, or at least we're being heard, and that's a place to start.
Yeah, I mean, and the bottom line, I think our messaging, for definitely after Ohio and Virginia and electoral losses is we have to understand ourselves as the warriors in this fight that this is a marathon, it's not a sprint. And we sustained the pro-life movement. We grew stronger the 49 years of Roe. We did not grow weary. And so now is not the time for us to grow weary. And so I am just so thankful for all the progress we've been able to make in 2023. The minds changed, the laws passed, and this is more stepping stones for us to build off of in 2024 as we head into what will be a pivotal year in the future of our nation. So, Kristi, thank you for coming on today and helping me relive this past year, good and bad. I really enjoyed having this conversation. I hope you all who've tuned in today are as excited as I am for the new year to save lives and to change our culture in the pro-life movement. We are moving forward. We're never going to be deterred, and that's why they hate us so much. No matter how many news stories and headlines they throw at us, Kristi, about supposed pro-life losses or whatever they want to name it. We know we're saving lives. We've met those children. We've seen them. We've seen them on campuses. We've seen them in our communities. We see them in our pregnancy centers. Those are mothers and fathers and whole families that we met. And that's why we continue to do this work. So thank you all. Have a great new year.